All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Wednesday, April 30th, right here on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns. I am Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. And this is All In Horns, presented by Rogue Sports Network. On today's episode, we're going to take a much deeper, detailed look at the new Texas Longhorns in the NFL and where they fit with their new team. Maybe how soon can we expect to see them in some meaningful football, not just in the preseason? And so we're going to kind of look at even the position groups of those teams and the depth and where they fit in and where they might find a spot on some of these teams. And so we'll go through all 12 of them. And essentially, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more draft and a little bit more football and things of that nature. But we will definitely dive into all of that. We might have some differing opinions on where some of these players will either line up or fall on their depth of their roster. And so, let's go ahead and get it going. Jake, let's go ahead, start off with the man of the hour, Kelvin Banks. We both probably full-heartedly agree there's probably not much of a discussion with this, but for the New Orleans Saints, they went ahead and they drafted Talise Fulaga last year, played him at left tackle, although he's a true right tackle, and now they will be moving him over to right tackle, and Kelvin Banks, I'm sure, will be the day one starter at left tackle.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would imagine is going to be the case in New Orleans. Kelvin Banks came into college ready to go, was better than even people had hoped for his first year. And I imagine that's what's going to happen with the Saints is people are going to go, wow, I guess his arms aren't that small whenever he just stonewalls everyone. And so, yeah, I've made my thoughts on Kelvin Banks very clear. Mel Kiper might not like him as much as Shedeur Sanders. But luckily, the draft ends up speaking for itself. And all those mocks that had Kelvin Banks going 18, 19, into the 20s, being the fourth or fifth tackle off the board, were a bunch of hogwash. He ended up being the third tackle off the board, which to me is still crazy. Especially when you consider, Membao was more of a right tackle. He moved to left 1 year, wasn't as good, was much better at right tackle. And then any concerns you had about Banks measurement wise, you definitely should have those about Will Campbell because he was lesser in most of the measurement categories. So I imagine Kelvin Banks is going to be a day one starter. I think he has potential to be a Pro Bowl type guy year one.
Yeah, no, Jake, I'm actually with you. I really think he's going to stand out and will be one of the. I mean, obviously, no accolades will go to like a rookie of the year will not fall to an offensive lineman. However, he will make
discrimination.
His presence felt. Yeah, that's big time discrimination at the offensive line level. So get the big boys some love. When it comes to draft grades, Jake, just real quickly, since we're at this point. Oh yeah. We have
my lineman cap on for this part.
A slight bias on this podcast for the offensive lineman, but in terms of draft grades, I think it's absurd that they come out with draft grades like the day after the draft ends, where none of these guys have even played. I do think, just for the sake of, and this will be the only time we mention Shedeur Sanders on this podcast, on this episode at least, is we don't necessarily know if Mel Kiper is wrong about Shedeur Sanders. He could technically be the best quarterback out of this draft class when it's all said and done 5-6 years from now. We don't know that, but my point being is that we can't really grade this draft class until they've actually had a little bit of an NFL career.
No, and all my complaints for Mel Kiper would still stand. Just to be clear, even if Shedeur Sanders is a Hall of Famer, I do not care. The way he acted on national television was a embarrassment to sports media. But your point is exactly right. Though I did see the PFF gave the Cowboys an A+, so their grade matters.
Only
one of three
PFF.
teams to get an A+.
Yeah, only PFF matters. Did you see that Mel Kiper gave his draft grades and only gave Cleveland an A+? Nobody else got.
Which is just too funny.
Yeah.
With taking too funny to even think about when, you consider they took Dylan Gabriel in the third round. Yeah. He literally just gave whatever team took Shedeur, regardless of where they took him, when they took him, was going to get an A. If the Titans took him 1-1,
Yeah.
They would have gotten an A+ for taking Shedeur Sanders.
Without a doubt. Jake, let's take a real quick look at the Saints depth chart when it comes to the tackle position and who Kelvin Banks is going to be competing with. Former Dallas Cowboy tackle Josh Ball and left tackle Easton Kilty. Never have heard of the guy before in my life. Again, Talisi Fuaga was drafted last year in the first round. He'll be moving to right tackle. And then Trevor Penning, who is kind of been, a pretty mainstay there at the Saints organization. But again, I don't think that he's also listed as a right tackle, and he might be playing swing. But I don't see a player on that roster that Kelvin Banks is even going to have to compete with. Air quotes for those listening on a podcast and not watching the video. But Kelvin Banks, day one starter. Easy.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest prediction out of this entire list we're going to go through is Kelvin Banks being a day one starter.
Yeah. Jake, let's go to the next one. First round, pick 20 to the Broncos, cornerback Jahdae Barron. I think he is going to probably be the starting nickel, maybe a rotational CB2. Obviously, you've got Pat Surtain, who is one of the top corners, if not the top corner in the league, and they really drafted Jahdae to kind of be his sidekick, his duo in the back there. So he was always kind of been drafted to be cornerback 2 compared to Pat Surtain. But Riley Moss, who played pretty well last year, white corner, shout out to the white corners, no longer extinct thanks to Cooper DeJean and Riley Moss. And then Damari Mathis, Chris Abrams, Drain, and Jaquan McMillan, who also kind of plays that nickel position. But again, between Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, I don't see Jahdae really falling down a depth chart that would require him not getting a whole lot of playing time.
Yeah, I mean, at worst, he's going to be like CB3, but I imagine he'll be on that outside corner on the opposite side of Pat Surtain.
The way defenses are played now, I mean, aren't nickels essentially starters?
Yes. I mean, that's why corners are so important now in the NFL. And why, even though the Broncos had a Pat Surtain, they still took a Jahdae Barron because he was probably their best player available. And they went, you know what? Might not be our biggest need, but slotting him in with Pat Surtain and now our corner depth, when all of a sudden a Riley Moss is becoming potentially your third corner, you're in a pretty good situation. And so, I think Denver's secondary is going to be really good. And guess what? Their division, probably a pretty good one to have a good secondary in.
I would think so. I would definitely think so with Patrick Mahomes and the wide receivers that they are starting to build a young core of wide receivers in Kansas City. And then also Justin Herbert now, again, trying to build the wide receivers around him, the weapons around him. But Justin Herbert obviously can sling the ball around. So,
and don't forget that experience. Secondary. Don't forget about that experience at Star for Jahdae Barron as well. He's a good tackler. And so he's a guy who's going to be able to get involved in stopping the run game. I think he has all the tools to succeed at the NFL level. Maybe a slightly undersized, but that's not as big of a deal when you have the ball skills and the ability that he has. I think he's going to be, he was the second pick out of all the Longhorns taken. And I think that's pretty fitting because I see him also being a pretty high impact player his first year.
I agree. All right. Still in the first round, the last of the first rounders from the Texas Longhorns, Matthew Golden, choosing number 22. Almost want to make him a bust because of that. That's a tough number to choose under your own free will at wide receiver. But yeah, number 22, Matthew Golden on the Green Bay Packers. Jake, me personally, I'm thinking wide receiver 2, maybe 3
can't
on
be
the
number. He
do
just
what
can't.
Now?
He can't be wide receiver 2 with that number.
It'd be triple twos, 2-2-2.
I mean, at worst, talent wise, he's wide receiver 2.
Right. With
behind
that number,
Christian
he might be
Watson.
wide receiver 4.
With that number, he might not make it past training camp. I mean,
he's got to get back.
That number is just wrong at wide receiver, and especially a true wide receiver. It's not even like he's a hybrid type guy, a Percy Harvin or something that's going to be getting a lot of handoffs and running the ball and kind of used everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Drop down into the teens just get out of the 20s. The 20s are not a wide receiver number.
Yeah, and I kind of want the NFL to go back to mandatory numbers at position groups. I'd kind of like it to go back to that, to be completely
Yeah,
honest.
that is my old man yelling at a cloud with the NFL over anything with the NFL right now. Yeah, the rough and the pat, all that. No.
Give
Number
me wide
20s
receivers
are
in the
not
80s.
a wide receiver.
I want wide receivers in the 80s. I want linemen in the 60s, 70s,
I'm cool
and
with the
90s.
teens for wide receivers.
Oh yeah.
I mean, especially that like 16 to 18 range, 19. That's normal.
Yeah, I also don't like. I'll be honest with you, Jake. I don't know if I love single digits at wide receiver.
It doesn't bother me near as much as 20s.
It doesn't bother me as much. I also, in the NFL, I don't want number 0. In college, I'm perfectly okay with 0.
I want a lineman to wear number 0, even though, of course, linemen aren't allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
But again, discrimination.
Again.
But most discriminated group on planet Earth. It's ridiculous.
You can't have a lineman stealing all the cool numbers, Jake.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We get 69. That's all you need.
That's all that matters. That's all you need. Let's take a look at the Packers depth chart, Jake, at wide receiver. Christian Watson, Jaden Reed. Those are probably going to be the top 2 options for a Jordan Love quarterback there. Romeo Dobbs, and then Mecole Hardman. Mecole Hardman, he's kind of fallen off a little bit since his stint with Kansas City. He's kind of been a journeyman a little bit. And then you've got Savion Williams, who was also drafted in this year's class in the 3rd round, I believe, for the Packers from TCU, and then Dotavian Wicks, which I know nothing about Wicks. So I would think that Golden fits within that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 range.
On this depth chart?
Yeah.
I think he's instantly wide receiver 2.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not very high on it.
Jaden Reed is probably going to be slot, and then Christian Watson and Matthew Golden on the outside.
Yeah, I think Golden profiles more as an outside receiver. So that's why I say to me, wide receiver 1 and 2 are your outside wide receivers.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I see Golden being a starter day 1 as an outside wide receiver, bar just not having a good camp, which with that number is possible. But but
he's
talent-wise,
representing Bullet Bob Hayes, baby.
But yeah, Packers much needed restocking of the wide receiver room. Unfortunately, because I hate Green Bay, but I do think their wide receiver room got quite a bit better.
And then one of the better picks that I thought that was kind of sneaky, at least in the 2nd round, was Alfred Collins to the 49ers. That was such a 49ers pick, Jake. Everything about that pick screamed 49ers. I think, honestly, looking at the 49ers depth, he's a possible starter day 1. He's also, at the very least, rotational guy, because they just needed bodies at that point. So he is at least going to be within that rotation on 1st, 2nd, 3rd down. Where they really use him, how they utilize him, I'm not 100% certain. But he could be a possible day 1 starter. Here's what the depth looks like, Jake. Jordan Elliott, Kevin Givens, CJ West, who is a rookie, Kalia Davis, and Evan Anderson. Name one guy you're actually familiar with that roster.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, now, and the thing about Alfred Collins is he's not a, pure pass rushing DT. He's not a pure, he's pretty solid at both.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I see him being, is just a really solid, probably a little under the radar at times, as a lot of good defensive tackles go. I just see him being a really good starter to regular rotational player in the NFL for some time. And the fit of San Fran, like you said, unfortunately, not for Alfred Collins, but just because it's San Fran and I hate San Fran. And a recurring theme with this draft with Longhorn players where they went, unfortunately. But I think he'll be an impact player right away for San Francisco. Really good fit for him to go to a good football team, a good franchise where they need him. They need that position, and he's going to get to play right away.
No, yeah, exactly. That's kind of my point was really Alfred Collins was a need pick, but he was also one of the better players available at that need. And so it just kind of marked off 2 checks on 1 box there for the San Francisco 49ers. All right, Andrew Makuba, second round pick to the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles depth at free safety, Reed Blankenship and Andre Sam. I think Andrew Makuba fits in right behind Reed Blankenship. Maybe some rotational packages and nickel and dime packages where he'll get on the field. But yeah, that's kind of where I see him. Also at strong safety, you got Sidney Brown and Tristan McCullum, where I think Andrew Makuba is a pure free safety. I think that's where he's going to play. I think that's where they want him to play. But yeah, Reed Blankenship is going to be the starter. But Makuba will have an excellent opportunity within a rotational package of nickel or dime defense.
Yeah, and I hate it. I just hate it. I hate it that he went to Philly because I do think Makuba has the ability to be a really, really good pro. Main thing for him is going to be health. He had it at Texas, but he obviously had issues with it at Clemson. Texas brought out the best out of him, as Texas does with a lot of players out of the transfer portal. The amount of pros that they put in, which we'll have a fun stat tomorrow for everyone, or actually, no, sorry, on Friday for everyone. On Friday's episode, fun stat loaded up from the Sarkisian era for Texas. But yeah, Makuba won't start, obviously. Blankenship will definitely hold down the starter role. But Makuba's going to be a guy that's going to be hard to keep off the field if he's healthy. I just think he's one of those guys who in training camp, he's going to start flashing. Preseason, he'll flash, and they'll be like, we have Blankenship, but we have to find a way to get Makuba snaps. And in the NFL, being able to rotate guys at positions is typically a pretty good thing, which, again, saying this makes me want to vomit because we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, and then also you throw in, the Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean and the secondary that they have in Philadelphia, and he just adds to the talent that they've
Can we cut all this?
accumulated.
Art?
To the next pick, Vernon Broughton to the New Orleans Saints, the second player to go to the New Orleans Saints. Third round, 71st pick. I see him starting off at least. I'm not saying he can't work his way up to more reps, but I can kind of see him kind of filling in at that third defensive tackle option for the Saints defensive tackles. They've got Devin Godchow, who was a free agent signing from Miami, and then Brian Breesy, who they spent a first-round draft pick on last year. Those two guys are probably solidified as the two starters. So I can kind of see Vernon Broughton fitting in at that third, fourth spot with Kalen Saunders, Nathan Shepard, John Ridgeway III.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Broughton's not on the field a decent amount his first year, because I think just like Collins, I have the same prediction for Broughton's career. I just see him being a really solid rotational, maybe starting defensive tackle for a long time in the NFL. And I think that will start right away this year, and he'll be rotating in regularly. And Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton took turns.
That's out of position, Jake, where you have to rotate guys out. You can't just you don't get an Aaron Donald.
Rotational is not a bad thing to say about a defensive tackle.
Correct. Yeah.
And for me, Broughton and Collins kind of took turns having their games where one of them went off. It always felt like one of them would just have a huge impact on the game.
Yeah.
And Broughton had his fair share of games where he just blew up plays, was a constant disruptor. Yeah. Vanderbilt, he was huge. I mean, he was really effective in both pass rush and run. And it doesn't always materialize in sacks with defensive tackles, but when you can move that pocket, that helps the edges of Texas get sacks.
The corners.
It's going to help your edges and pros get sacks. It helps your secondary. It helps everyone. And it makes the quarterback's life harder. Pressure up the middle is the worst type of pressure to deal with for a quarterback. Just about any quarterback will tell you that. And so, yeah, I see Broughton being maybe not like a heavy impact player, but making an impact on the field year one. And I think he'll have a really solid pro career.
He can have the same career as a Poona Ford or a guy of that nature who's a former Longhorn, Charles Omenihu, who is kind of
the Jason Kelsey killer.
Yeah,
Poona Ford.
You can have guys, even and obviously I think we've seen a Tavondre Sweat make a more immediate impact. And I don't necessarily see, Verton making that type of impact as Sweat did in year one. But yeah, there are some guys who are making their names heard around the league from the University of Texas at the defensive tackle spot. They just translate really well from what Texas does. All right, Jake, in the 4th round, tight end Gunnar Helm to the Titans, going to go in there with Cam Ward, and they've actually got a decent little wide receiver core. I forgot that they had gotten Tyler Lockett, and they also signed who was it? I was just looking at their depth chart, but they've actually got 2 other guys that were I was like, obviously Taylon Burks, who was a couple years ago, first round pick. They're going to try to get him back healthy this year for the first time in what feels like 2 years. But at tight end, Jake, the Titans definitely needed some help. He might be a possible starter. I think he starts off as tight end 2, just because it'll be Chig Okawow's second year with the team. I don't know a whole lot about Chig, but I can only imagine that Gunnar Helm is going to compete with that starting position between Josh Wiley, David Martin Robinson, Jake. That is David Robinson's son, so that's kind of cool. And then Thomas Okudio. Very difficult names to pronounce for the Tennessee Titans at their tight end position, except for Gunnar Helm. So that also might help with the coaches being like, hey, Helm, get in there. I'm tired of pronouncing all these other names. And he just ends up getting more reps in practice.
Nice 1-syllable one.
Yeah, just a
for
nice
them.
Gunnar Helm, easy to pronounce, easy to throw out there. You can easily read it. Coaches,
he's got less syllables in his whole name than most of the tight end room does in their last names. But
and I butchered all of them, so I apologize.
Yes,
but.
I don't know how to say them. I know you said them incorrectly, though. Just by looking at the spelling, it's like he's butchering that. I don't know how to say it, but he's not doing a good job.
No, not doing a good job at all. But Gunnar Helm, the point stands that Gunnar Helm will have a potential to be a day 1 starter, or at least compete for that starting position very early on this season, I think.
I mean, preseason and training camp are just going to be so important for him to be able to have an impact right away. And it's going to be interesting to see how he translates. I think Sarkisian does a really good job with tight ends. And so I think that translation is a little bit harder just because the scheme isn't probably going to be as good, quite honestly. I don't know much about what Tennessee is going to be doing offensively. I did not watch a single Titans game last year, other than if they were occasionally on Red Zone, possibly.
If they popped up on Red Zone getting scored on,
they did not pop up on Red Zone very often, let me tell you.
Unless it was they were getting scored on, then yes, I did.
And I watch a lot of Red Zone. It's not like I don't watch a ton of NFL football. I do. But I did not see them on my screen very much last year.
No.
But yeah, I mean, that really good landing spot again. Another guy that I think got a very good place, especially for being taken in the 4th round, to have a chance where if you can pop in training camp and in preseason, you will have a chance to start. And when you're taken in the 4th round, that's all you can ask for.
We're going to have to start watching some Tennessee Titan games because they've got Tavondre Sweat, they got DeAndre Coburn, now they've got Gunnar Helm. They've got about 3 or 4 Texas Longhorns on that roster from Sarkisian's teams, and so they might be the Texas Titans.
They'll be an interesting team to watch this year. I think they'll be a lot better than they were this year. And the Titans aren't typically a number 1 pick team. No. It was kind of weird seeing them at the number 1 pick.
Yeah, they're a franchise that's. I mean, Jake, they were in close to an AFC championship game. They were the 1 seed in the AFC not 3-4 years ago with Mike Vrabel.
They were in the AFC title game 5 years ago or something.
Yeah. So not that far removed from pretty successful football. Byron Sorrell, Jake, I'm excited about his career. Maybe not at Green Bay, but I am excited to see him and see how he translates to the NFL. 4th round pick by the Packers. I think he'll probably, looking at the depth chart, they've obviously invested in the defensive end position in previous seasons. And so I think he will probably be fighting for that backup rotational role of spelling some guys out for maybe a couple plays during a series, but maybe defensive end number 3 or 4. But you've got Rashawn Gary. He's your starter. Lucas Van Ness, he was a second round. I think he was a first round pick for the Packers a couple years ago. And he is also your other defensive end starter. So you got your two starters right there. Kingsley Ingbare, Jake, if I think I'm spelling that or I'm pronouncing that correctly, he will probably
I
be
don't think
kind
so.
of within that range of Ingbare and Britton Cox Jr. Baron Sorrell will probably fit in there, and then you've got Colin Oliver, who was also drafted this year for the Green Bay Packers in a later round. So that's depth.
Sorrell fell a little further than I thought he would. I thought he'd go in that third round.
I thought his measurables were really good
Measurable
for
his
the
tape.
NFL.
I didn't see. I just saw a third round. If anything, I would have said maybe he goes late second. Just not being a crazy elite pass rusher is the only downside. And that's where kind of the biggest downside for Sorrell is here. He landed it at a place that he's probably not going to be able to start at.
Yeah.
He's more of a starting edge than he is because sometimes you have those pass rush specialists that sit behind. That's not Sorrell. Sorrell's an every down guy.
Yeah.
It's really good against the run and still an effective pass rusher at the least.
I could see him in short yardage situations, Jake, and they kind of bring in, two or three extra linemen to stop, a tush push situation. I could see him being very successful on a third and short goal line stand situation, at least to kind of start off his career and get more reps that way of live football. And then obviously as a rotational guy, and then he'll be a good depth piece, Jake. If someone gets banged up for a couple of weeks, he'll be able to fill in that starting role really no problem.
Yeah, because I do think Sorrell has a pretty good ceiling in the NFL. I mean, I think he could be a starter in the NFL. I don't know whether or not that'll be at Green Bay, but if he gets on the field, I feel like he'll start to win people over just because he makes those hard-nosed plays. He's almost kind of like a DeMarcus Lawrence, but not quite, obviously not as good of a pass rusher.
Yeah.
Talking about DeMarcus Lawrence when he was playing his best football. But just far as like DeMarcus Lawrence was such an all-around edge, and people would be like, he doesn't have enough sacks. And it's like, won't watch the game.
Yeah.
And you'll see why he's considered one of the best. He's impacting it every play rather than just on the one sack he gets every other week.
Yeah.
But Sorrell could be a guy like that, just not having the same sack numbers, in my opinion, or hurries. But it's just far as being that every impact type of guy. Because he is very powerful. He's really good against the run, and he's not a bad pass rusher.
A pick that you and I are very excited about, Jake, to the Dallas Cowboys, Jaden Blue, running back in the 5th round. Obviously going to start off as being probably the backup, but maybe he's running back 2 on this Cowboys offense. I think that's kind of where his career is going to lie, Jake. I don't ever see him being much of an every down workhorse type running back of getting, all 3 downs, 1 through 3, as the primary running back. I kind of always will feel like he'll kind of be that spell running back, passing situations, a situational kind of guy. But the Cowboys signing Javonte Williams, who his career didn't really pan out the way it wanted to. He was a high draft pick for the Denver Broncos a handful of years ago, and now he's kind of in his second stint after his rookie contract didn't extend him. And so Javonte Williams will probably get the starting nod, at least starting out going into training camp and into preseason. Miles Sanders, whose career has taken a really big dip. Even the Carolina Panthers didn't really want to bring him back, but he did find a spot so far, at least in training camp for the Dallas Cowboys. And then you've got Phil Maffa, who was also drafted by the Cowboys this same season in the 7th round. You've got Deuce Vaughn, who that experiment has kind of gone by the wayside and not really panned out. And Malik Davis, who was actually competing with Rico Dowdle for a number of years. And then Rico, his career kind of jump-started, and then Malik's kind of stayed where it was. And so I would say Malik and Deuce probably the odd men out, maybe Miles Sanders. But Jaden Blue probably fitting into that running back 2, running back 3 spot.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to just see how this room shakes out for the Cowboys, because every time I hear Miles Sanders' name, I immediately think, oh, good running back, because I was so high on him coming out of college. It's just never quite fully panned out in the pros.
And he's had moments. That's the problem, is he's had moments of being a good to decent running back.
he's shown those. He's had stretches where you're like, oh yeah, that's the guy I watched on tape from college. But then he'll just disappear, or has a fumbling issue, or gets hurt, or this, that, and the other. And so he's a guy who I'm curious to see how he kind of works out with Dallas, because I do think Phil Maffa and Jaden Blue will be pushing for playing time, especially Jaden Blue. He really gives something that this running back room does not have.
Speed.
I mean, and that's the thing, is Miles Sanders would be, I think Miles Sanders and Jaden Blue would be competing against each other, because that's kind of what Miles Sanders' role should be. I'd be higher on Jaden Blue for that role. As long as he can hold on to, if he goes into training camp and he gets the yips with fumbles, that's a quick ticket out. I mean, coaches at any level do not put up with it.
And that's a whole other thing too, Jake, is where can Miles Sanders compete with Jaden Blue when it comes to special teams? That's where a lot of your running backs are playing lower on the depth chart, is on special teams units. Does either one of those guys have special teams unit availability? And I think Jaden Blue, you could put him out, at least experiment with him in training camp at punt return or kick return, see what he does. I know he didn't do a ton of it at Texas, if any, but it's possible if he gets his fumbling issue situated that, he has more potential on special teams than Miles Sanders does.
Yeah. Granted, as a backup, you have Turpin, and there was a rule change. I would have to look it up again. I'm not fully locked into all
the
NFL
had a rule change. What?
Yeah, on the kickoff.
You're kidding.
And I'm pretty sure it incentivizes more returns from this new system. So that kickoff return position more important than ever.
Jake, I feel like they get it at the 35 and not the 30. I think they're pushing it up, the touchback. I think they're pushing it up.
Yeah, it's moving the touchback. I know that. And so that sounds right. The 35. And so I do think that'll push more returns. So you could throw a Turpin and a Blue back there. You could do some things with that. So he does have potential there, but I think Blue's the thing that will determine whether Blue makes the roster, gets playing time, will be whether he fumbles or not. Because that is the thing. That is the only reason he didn't become a workhorse back at Texas. Was he got a little banged up early on, but then once he was healthy, he kept fumbling. And coaches at any level, if you are fumbling, you are not on the field, especially after you get the second chance and then you do it again.
Yeah. Unless you're,
and that was a problem all throughout college for him.
No, it was. It was never like a few game stretch or a one season, fumble bug. No, it was at every stage of his college career. He dealt with the fumble bug. And so that'll be one thing that I'll be holding my breath on when it comes to Jaden Blue, especially for the Dallas Cowboys. So, but yeah, I mean, Phil Maffa, Jake, like you mentioned, I think he's actually going to find himself, on the final, 52-man roster for the Dallas Cowboys as well. When it comes to,
he could be an RB1. He's a workhorse type of running back.
He's more of the 4 or 5 yards a carry guy, whereas Jaden Blue again would spell you out, and he's more of the big playmaker, receiving back out of the backfield. So even if it ever comes to the day and time where those two guys are your two primary guys, Phil Maffa I would have as your every down back, and then Jaden Blue coming in to spell him out. Regardless of the talent or, how good one player is over the other.
Yeah. I think if you're going to take two of a running back, I actually think the Cowboys did a pretty good job here of selecting two guys that have different styles.
Oh yeah.
That can complement each other. So I haven't complimented the Cowboys very much on this podcast. I think they did a good job in this draft in general. And I think they did a good job considering where they had to take running backs. I think they did a good job with the ones they took of being contradicting styles that will complement each other.
I agree. Yeah. They probably wanted to take a running back earlier, but then there'd be a run on 4 or 5 running backs, and then you'd have to wait your turn for the next.
And you
round.
Don't reach.
Nope, not at that position.
It's a bad drafting strategy to reach for position of need. And when the Cowboys have done that, that's when their draft picks haven't worked out.
Yeah. Jake, going back to the Eagles staying in the NFC East, Cam Williams, right tackle, picked in the 6th round at pick number 207. Looking at the Eagles' depth, there's no way he starts, but could be a pretty decent backup if he can kind of learn the ropes from a guy like Lane Johnson. But you've got Lane Johnson at right tackle, Jordan Mailata at left tackle. But then really after those guys, you don't have a whole lot of depth at right tackle. Kendall Lamb Miles Hinton, who's another rookie, and then Holland Pierce, another rookie. I think that was an undrafted rookie free agent. But you're going to have a very young depth at the tackle position for the Eagles. So if anything does happen to one of those tackles, I mean, who's the next man up? Maybe it might not be, Cam Williams right from the get-go, especially if it's left tackle. But, I mean, he might be next man up behind Lane Johnson if that potential turns into production like we were talking about, going into the draft process.
It's a really good spot for Cam Williams to end up as far as not having to start right. I think him having to start right away would be really bad for his career just because I don't think he's ready. And in today's NFL, you get judged real quick off your performance early on. I mean, people call people bust after their first year, which is just
wild,
ridiculous and stupid. And not coaches and franchises don't do that, but they will move on quick, especially if you're struggling really badly. And so this is a good spot for Josh Rosen, especially at the quarterback position. But for Cam Williams, I think this is a good place for him to end up because he has time to develop, and he needs some time to develop. He really needed one more year in college. And unfortunately, for him, that ended up showing up with where he got drafted. He lost a lot of money from people giving him bad advice.
Yeah. And another conversation, Jake, that I think is absolutely ridiculous. It's one thing. Oh, no, I almost skipped one of your offensive linemen, Jake. I apologize. I won't do that. But I was going to jump right to Quinn Ewers. I jumped the gun, almost got excited. But I stopped myself. Hayden Conner, 6th-round pick. Just a few picks later at guard for the Arizona Cardinals. I think he'll be a depth piece. I'm not sure exactly where he lines up on the depth chart. Where his game translates to the NFL is very unclear to me. I don't know how he translates, but the good thing about him is I don't know a single guard on the Arizona Cardinals roster. So maybe he finds his way sneaking into a starting position at some point in the season with an injury or something like that to somebody else. But Evan Brown, Isaiah Adams, Jake Curran, Royce Newman, Nick Levert. Again, never heard of a single one of those guys. So
I didn't see the Cardinals very much on my television last year either.
They were a rough watch. I think they went through 9 quarterbacks or something ridiculous like that. I mean, they had a new one.
They do that every year. It all starts to blend together for the Cardinals. But I think Hayden Conner's role in the NFL will be that of a very good backup guard, where your starter gets hurt, or maybe he starts on a not very good team. But I don't think he's going to be part of some elite offensive line in the NFL. I just don't think he has that versatility for the NFL. But I think if your starter gets hurt and he comes in, he'll be one of those players who'll be like, I didn't notice him get embarrassed. He played well.
Sure.
The average fan, that's what they'll say. And he'll grade out, average to slightly below average. But that's really good for a backup guard, especially in the NFL where backup linemen stink.
Yeah,
most of the time
it's hard to come across good ones.
I think Hayden Conner's just a guy who can step in, play a good amount of games for you, and be unnoticeable. But sometimes that's a good thing for an offensive lineman because, as we both know, for an offensive lineman, you get beat twice in a game. It doesn't matter if you had 68 perfect snaps and 2 bad snaps. Everyone will say you sucked because of those 2 bad snaps. And Hayden Conner, I think, can do a good job of avoiding that. I mean, his biggest issue is just he's never going to be an elite run blocking guard. He never became a very good run blocking guard at Texas. And it's definitely not just going to all of a sudden happen in the NFL. It's not like he came out as a junior or a redshirt sophomore. He used up all of his eligibility at Texas. But being good at pass pro is really important, especially in the NFL and especially for your backups, because typically pass pro is where you see a big drop off.
Yeah. Jake, let's go ahead. Final pick of the Longhorns draft, Quinn Ewers, someone who could have made millions in college, but yet here's my funny thing about Quinn Ewers and the narrative surrounding Quinn Ewers of he lost so much money going to the NFL draft where he could have gotten a $3 to $4 million deal in college. Well, you also gave him a lot of crap for taking the bag coming out of high school, for going his senior year and going to the college ranks because he was chasing the bag. And now your narrative has flipped because he didn't stay in college for chasing the bag and pursuing a dream of his, a career that he's always wanted to get to, and in a quarterback class where he probably had the most opportunity to get drafted. So yeah, the moving of the goalpost with this Quinn Ewers narrative is absurd to me. He did the right thing. He knew his time at Texas was over. He knew that he had left a long-term legacy at the University of Texas, and a legacy in which he can always return to Austin if need be. If the NFL doesn't work out for him, guess what he can do? He can go back to the University of Texas. He can go on campus, or he can just make appearances for millions of dollars for the rest of his life. I mean, Colt McCoy will never have to have a ever real job ever again. Vince Young never has to have a real job ever again, because they were guys. Sam Ehlinger, same way. They took Texas to new heights. They're faces of the program, and that's what Quinn Ewers will always be at Texas. So him going to the NFL was never a real decision of, do I stay in college or not? It was, I'm going to go to the NFL, and this is what I want to try to do. And more kudos to him. Also fell at one of possibly the best fits for him in the entire draft. You and I, we talked about that earlier this week. And so I didn't realize, one thing that I did forget was Miami had signed Zach Wilson over the offseason. So they had already kind of established their backup quarterback role. I do think him being behind Tua and Zach Wilson with Mike McDaniel as the head coach, he's probably going to be QB3 going into preseason, going into the regular season. But I do think that this system really bodes well to his skill set, very, very much so.
Yeah, Steve Sarkisian was talking about that. I kind of talked about it in length, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here. But I do think it's a really good fit. Another thing on Quinn, apparently, Steve Sarkisian never took a dollar from the collective at Texas. All of his deals were as what Steve Sarkisian called the true meaning of name, image, and likeness, was where he made all of his money. And he made a lot in college, but and if he would have went to a different school and played somewhere else, it would have hurt his legacy if he ended somewhere else as far as being a Longhorn. And so like you said, just re-listen to what Tanner just said. Go listen to what Josh Pate said. That is what I think. Yeah. When it comes to, as far as need to stop hitting my camera. As far as
worked up over there.
Yeah, it just annoys me because of the things so at a high level, it's just the same people that bitch and moan about players making money are now calling Quinn Ewers an idiot for leaving to pursue his dream and not taking a bag to stay in college and leave his college that he made a legacy at. It's ridiculous. He should be applauded for what he did, regardless of where he got drafted. And guess what? He got drafted way lower than anyone predicted. Way more people said, there was people saying he could go in the second or third round. Quarterbacks just slipped in this draft, unless you were Dylan Gabriel, who just got taken to the Cleveland Browns, which are a joke of an organization. And I wouldn't want Quinn to go. I'd rather Quinn go in the 7th round to Miami than the 2nd round to Cleveland, because he's got a better chance of actually having a career in the NFL now than if he got taken by a Cleveland.
That's
and so for Quinn,
said.
that is the biggest thing you can look at from this. If you're Quinn, is be upset you're taking the 7th round. Use that as a chip on your shoulder, but also realize it could be a blessing in disguise, because you ended up at a place where he's going to be competing for QB2 right away. You can't sit there, especially if Zach Wilson's wearing number 0. Get out of here. That's worse than Matthew Golden wearing 22.
Wait, is he's wearing number 0 going into this year?
For the amount of touchdowns he's going to throw this year.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's an unserious number. That's just, no, Quinn's got that one in the bag. He's QB2. I'm moving my prediction from QB3 to QB2 with that, with knowing that information.
He's competing for QB2 at the least. And I think Mike McDaniel can continue to develop Quinn, because with Quinn,
so Tua's not playing in the preseason. You're not going to put him out there, not even for a single snap.
And I'm going to watch every Dolphins preseason game.
Yeah.
You better believe it. I'm excited to watch Quinn Ewers in the pros.
Yeah. And if you're going to go with 3 quarterbacks, guess who's getting first half? Guess who's getting second half? And that's just going to be the 2 quarterbacks playing. So that'll be a lot of fun to see Miami Dolphins preseason games for sure. It'll be fun to watch all the preseason because we've got so many Longhorns to keep track of. Well, that's our episode. That was what that was the only thing on the docket for today. And so these new NFL Longhorns and where they fit on their new teams for Wednesday's episode. For tomorrow's episode, we are going to be breaking down the baseball and softball series. Both of them start tomorrow on Thursday. They play through Saturday in their 3-game series. Texas traveling to Fayetteville, Arkansas to take on the Razorbacks. And then the ladies will end their regular season against Kentucky. And so then they will go, into the SEC tournament play following that series. So for Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. Like, share, and subscribe. Almost to 700 subscribers now. I think we were at 295 last time I checked.
Huge shoot up in the
Big
last
shoot
week.
up over the draft week and college baseball kind of ramping up. We've gotten a big push. So keep the likes coming, keep the subscriptions coming. We definitely appreciate it, and we'll give you more content just like we do each and every day right here on All in Horns. Again, for Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. This has been your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.